Crystal chandeliers glowed like judgment from above as the dining room hushed itself. The billionaire, famous for buying silence as easily as wine, rose from his chair, face carved in impatience. People averted their eyes. Managers stiffened. Cameras stayed tucked away. Power had rules in this room, and he wrote them. Then a young black waitress steadied a trembling tray and, instead of shrinking, stood her ground. Her breath slowed, her shoulders squared, and the distance between them became a line no one else dared cross. In a place built for luxury, something far more valuable surfaced: conscience. What followed that night would expose the price of complicity, the mechanics of modern-day humiliation, and the single act of courage that turned a gilded room into a mirror. The hotel prided itself on velvet hush and practiced smiles. Servers memorized preferences the way scholars recite verses. The corner table's burgundy always decanted. The low light dimmed for photographs. The favorite dessert served 1 minute early, so it looked effortless. And everyone understood the ritual that unfolded whenever the billionaire visited. He arrived with an entourage of men who measured respect by volume and speed. Heads bowed. Pathways cleared. Requests became commands the moment they left his lips. The waitress, Amara, had been trained to keep pace with the choreography, to be invisible while making everything appear. She was new to this dining room, but not to the way status bends a space. She recognized the tiny pauses when she entered a cluster of patrons, the sidelong glances that appraised not just her technique, but her right to occupy the center of a tableau meant for wealth. On her first week, she learned what the veterans already knew. Money speaks, prejudice whispers, and together they can drain a person's dignity in the time it takes to refill a glass. That night, the billionaire's arrival felt like a storm front. Air pressure changed. Management hovered closer than usual, tightening protocols that always seemed to squeeze hardest around employees like Amara. Rules about posture, tone, and distance sharpened to a razor's edge. A misstep wouldn't be a small mistake. It would be a story told behind closed doors about standards, a reminder of what some people call professionalism and others recognize as policing. Amara prepared her station with the deliberate grace she reserved for moments of scrutiny. She checked the table numbers twice, polished the silver until reflections looked honest, and rehearsed the routes that kept trays level and mind calm. She didn't plan to become a symbol that night. Symbols are chosen by other people. She planned to work with care, to earn her tips, to go home and call her mother. Yet the room had been shaped by powers that made calm impossible. When the billionaire snapped his fingers for service, the staff moved as one, except Amara, who moved with intention. In the hush between his gesture and her arrival, the story's fuse was lit. He wanted perfection performed without humanity, the dish placed at a precise angle, the wine poured to a line only he could see. The world arranged to reassure him that he was always right. Minor errors became excuses to display dominance. A server's hesitation became a spectacle. Amara sensed the ritual forming around her like a cage. She noticed the way his gaze lingered not on the food, but on her face, searching for submission. She recognized the choreography of disrespect, the talking over, the dismissive wave, the expectation that her presence was a service and her person a background. When he raised his voice, every conversation in the room thinned to a brittle thread. Amara felt the heat of 100 eyes, some sympathetic, many curious, too many eager for drama without consequence. Racism rarely announces itself grandly. It enters through entitlement and settles in the comfort of those who benefit. Tonight it wore a tailored suit, then came the push. An accusation dressed as a correction, an insinuation that she didn't belong, that she was hired for optics, not skill. A manager moved toward them, not to help but to contain. Amara breathed in, measured the distance between fear and self-respect, and decided that the floor would not become her stage of apology. She set the tray down, stood fully upright, and met his glare with quiet steadiness the room wasn't used to seeing. Power expects its reflection. Resistance is a crack in the glass. When Amara refused to bend, the script collapsed. The billionaire rose, pushing his chair back with the scrape of entitlement. The room flinched. He gestured broadly, as if conducting an orchestra of shame. Yet his performance found no music. Amara's posture held, shoulders aligned, chin level, hands still. She didn't trade insult for insult. She offered something the room could not ignore: unwavering dignity. That silence, heavy, deliberate, unblinking, rewrote the scene. The manager froze between allegiance and accountability. A couple at a nearby table lowered their forks and stared, not at the billionaire's fury, but at the courage that absorbed it without breaking. Even the entourage, trained to echo swagger, faltered. The hotel's polished mirrors caught Amara's reflection and multiplied it, as if the room itself decided who deserved center stage. When the billionaire reached for theatrics, enough to humiliate, to make an example, Amara made the smallest move with the largest consequence. She calmly stepped back, removing the stage he assumed he owned. She pointed, not at him, but toward the policies displayed near the entrance, the ones that promise respect to all guests and staff. The room followed her gesture and discovered the gap between promises and practice. In that instant, the billionaire stood alone with his anger, while she stood with something stronger. After the storm comes the accounting. The manager, now faced with witnesses and mirrors, sided with procedure and escorted the entourage to a private lounge where apologies might be negotiated like contracts. Yet the center of gravity had shifted. Patrons approached Amara quietly, not with pity but with acknowledgement. A veteran server squeezed her shoulder in gratitude. The sommelier offered water as if it were a medal. None of it erased the harm, but recognition can be a first stone in the rebuilding of a person's steadiness. By the end of the night, the hotel's leadership reviewed security footage and statements, not to hunt for drama, but to weigh liability. But underneath the legal language was a different ledger. How often had they allowed wealth to dictate worth? How many staff evaluations disguised the racial bias of fit? How many training sessions taught avoidance instead of solidarity? The footage could not show the years that teach a black woman to breathe through another person's need to dominate. It could, however, capture a truth that left no room for reinterpretation. Dignity is a force, and rooms change when it shows up. Amara finished her shift with steady hands. News of the incident traveled, first as gossip, then as a conversation, finally as policy. The hotel instituted a visible code of conduct for all guests, empowered staff to halt service when harassment occurred, and trained managers to act before the moment demanded heroism. The billionaire returned weeks later to a different stage, one where money couldn't purchase impunity. He found his seat waiting, but the script was gone. For viewers, the takeaway is not that courage is easy or that institutions reform overnight. It is this: racism thrives in ordinary rooms when silence rehearses it. Change begins when someone refuses to play the role they were assigned and others choose to back that refusal with action. In a chandelier-lit dining room, a young black waitress drew a line with composure, and the line held. The question lingers as the credits fade. In your daily rooms of comfort and compromise, when entitlement tries to buy your silence, which side of the line will you strengthen?